Hello, hello, hello. Happy Tuesday evening or almost Wednesday morning for some. I think I have the times right. It might actually even be Wednesday morning. How's everybody doing? Let's say hi. Hi, Kez Chick. You a good noodle you with your stars. Nonstop Mom. Oh, thank you very much for waiting. I appreciate that. Hi, Callie. How's it going? Amelia Sparkles. How you doing? Bowling with Cotton Balls. Welcome back. Good to see you guys. Hey, howdy, hi. All right. So, as many of you know, or some of you may not know, closing arguments were today, and we're going to play those because I think they're worth listening to a second time if you've already heard them. And hey, Molson Man, good to see you. And we're going to hear the verdict, and we're going to talk all about all the things. But before we do that, I want you guys to know that your girl here is forever keeping her eye out for new, interesting, upcoming trials. Okay. And many of you who are true crime aficionados would probably are familiar with the Pike County family massacre. I think it was back in 2016. Well, one of the family members, yes, bowling for with cotton balls, it is back. As many people may know or may not know, but one of the accomplices to that massacre in Ohio is on trial. And right now what's happening is jury selection. And the trial is scheduled to start August 29th, I believe, 28th or 29th. Now, I saw a promo, talk about it on Law and Crime Network. One thing they did not say on the promo was whether or not it was going to be televised. So I'm not sure if it will be or not. If it is, I will absolutely cover it live every day. But before that trial gets underway, I want to go over the case with you. It's a fascinating case. It's a ton of different rabbit holes. It's a lot, and it's a good case to cover. And yes, bowling with cotton balls. You did say by supper, and yeah, pretty. I mean, well, it was close to supper time for me on the East Coast, but yeah. So yeah, that's coming up, and I wanted I'm going to cover that. So I've been working on doing the backstory and putting something together. So we'll have something to talk about during the night, during the nights at night when I go live. Because there's not, I can't, if there's another case in between, then of course and it's interesting, of course I will cover it because I like doing that with you guys. But yeah, it's a fairly complex case. Or this jury selection is fairly complex. They sent out 1,000 jury summons, and the picking of the jury is expected to last at least 2 weeks. So I thought that was interesting. So I'm going to be covering that for you guys. I still have some West Memphis 3 stuff that I'm going to go over. Bloom Tick Bloom asked me to go over all of the arguments that people who believe they're guilty use and debate, just contradict them if I can. Some of the time they're right about some of the stuff. So if they're not, if it's right, I will say it's right. I forgot what I was doing. Oh, not what I wanted to do. Oops. Hold on. So I'm still going to do that. I'm still doing the DeFeo. I just need to learn how to manage my time better, because covering the trials in the morning, like, is like half the day for me, because it depends on where they start. And then sometimes after I get off of a live, I don't always want to get right back into researching, but I have to make myself do it because I'm getting really behind and it's just gross. So, um, yeah. So I still have all that content. I think what I might do with the, I don't know. I was thinking might do, um, hold on a second. I'm going to cough and I don't want to cough in everybody's ear. Hold on. Sorry, you guys. I was choking and I didn't want to have to choke in your ear. So hold on just a second. I get this together. I don't know why it's not letting me. All right. So sorry about that. Ah, Sam, thank you. No, I took a drink of tea and it went down the wrong pipe. You guys. Yeah. I was thinking maybe I would do like a DeFeo video instead of a live, because I don't know, but I think I'm just gonna do a live and do the trial part is next, and I'll figure it out. I just need to like make myself a schedule and stick to it instead of just being like, oh, willy nilly, I'm just a flitting over here and a flitting over there. I need to like buckle down and stop monkeying around, basically. That's what needs to happen. So I'm not going to make you guys sit through the jury instructions. You guys, obviously, if you want to, it's uh it was streamed today on WFAA, and you can go back and watch that if you want to. It's pretty standard. We've heard a lot of jury instructions before, especially in capital murder. So, what I want you guys to be able to see is the, hold on. All right, let me push pause. I want you guys to see the closing arguments. And so, um, how cool am I for what? Well, I did. Oh, speaking of Molson Man, before I forget. Well, thank you. I'm glad you guys think that I'm cool. I appreciate it. The other thing I want to tell you is I want to remind you guys, if you have Peacock, I think it's the highest tier though. If you have Peacock, the black phone is going to be available to stream Friday. Molson and I will be watching that movie, and Molson and I will be giving you our review with no spoilers because we're not cruel. I haven't seen it. I did go on a Likens panel a while back, and he talked about um, the black phone, but I didn't get to see it. So but when he, it was still in theaters and it wasn't streaming, and you guys know my whole story. I can't really go to the movie theater. I be getting distracted and I see what's in the background. It's the whole thing. Anyway, so I'm very excited for that. Hey, Christine. Okay. The black phone it's not actually based on a real true crime. It is, it is based on a story written by Stephen King's son. It is, and I just love this word and I never get to use it enough. It is an amalgam of like John Wayne Gacy and the Candyman. So, which both John Wayne Gacy and the Candyman are abhorrent cases to study, but there is a theory that they were working at the same time in the same area. And they were also in cahoots with a ring. So there's a documentary on ID channel about it. It's quite fascinating. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing. Yes, whimsical flittering. I like to be like, I don't want to be like all the way Diane. I mean, quote unquote, Diane Downs. What I want to be, just flittering here and there. But I don't want to be like a kookaloo. Maybe I do want to be a kookaloo. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what we're doing. That's the plan. So I got to get with Molson and figure out a good time to do it, because I have to Saturday faux show. Saturday night, I've got to finish up the trial part of the DeFeo murders, because I'm super behind on that. So I think I want to, if Diane Downs equates being kookaloo with negative as a negative thing, then yes, I want to be a kookaloo. That's now I want to tell everybody that the 911 call is going to be played in closing. Okay. And just remember what kind of case this is. And, if you got to take a second or a 5 minutes or whatever you need to do to keep your, to maintain your sanity, mental health, keep you in a good place, please do it. It will not offend me. I will never judge. But this is a hard case. And some of the arguments that were made during cross-examination might be, we did, but not everybody got to hear them, Amelia. So I wanted people to hear them. So I think what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to play the first part of the state's closing arguments. I'm going to play the defense's closing arguments, and then I'm going to play the state's rebuttal. I think that's what I want to do. I think that'd be better. All right, hold on. Because, all right, that's as good as I can get it. Hold on.
No plan. But they even, who were friends, who? The desk, that big.
For the PowerPoint presentation. So Mr. Patton's going to set that up. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bahram Hughes. You didn't get to hear from me.
Sorry, Amelia.
Trial,
my bad.
I'm looking forward to speaking to you today. On behalf of Mr. Saeed and the rest of the defense team, I thank you for your time, attention, patience, taking your lives away and putting them on pause to hear this very important case. I feel very passionate about this case, so that's why I have a PowerPoint and that's why I have my notes. I don't want to not miss.
Okay, babe, good. I'm glad. Thank you for being understanding.
And unfortunately, as the defense, we have a lot of things to go over that were not presented to you, ladies and gentlemen, okay? I want you to understand the jury charge that was read to you by the judge is based on the Texas and U.S. constitutions, okay? Both of those documents are very important because those are the documents that protect us. People like Mr. Saeed or people like us in the community. And those documents are important to protect us from the government not doing things appropriately. I'm not going to pass judgment on the reasons for why, but I'm going to throw out what I saw in this case. And I believe what you saw as well. This case reminds me of 3 words. Unfortunately, these 3 words are not great words. Disappointing, ignorant, and offensive. And I'm going to break down those 3 words for you today. First of all, what we do know, and it's been very clear, is that 2 beautiful, intelligent young ladies were murdered. That is very clear. It was very clear by all the witnesses that those young ladies were murdered in an unknown location. Okay?
I'm sorry, what?
It's very clear that those ladies were moved from that unknown location to...
Hold on a minute. Ladies and gentlemen of the war jury, please put a 1 in the chat if it was made clear that the girls were murdered in another location. Put a 2 in the chat if it was not made very clear.
The Omni Mandalay Hotel to the cab stand. No investigation was done. You know, the movement from a location of an offense to a public location.
They can,
means
Callie. Yes, ma'am.
the person that moved those bodies wanted those bodies to be found. That's what that means. But that's why investigations are so important in these types of cases. That's why police get taxpayer dollars and funding from the federal government and the state government to do their jobs, to investigate what happened, to obtain all of the evidence necessary to explain what happened.
Yeah, they
So we
can,
know
because
no
remember
investigation was completed
from
by the
Chazzle
OPD
Dazzle,
or FBI before
she
seeking
stood
a
up and said,
full-on
I'm going to have to
international
object.
manhunt for Yaser Saeed. You heard that all this past week. I want to talk about the evidence in this case. You heard about the 911 call and this email. You're going to take those back with you, okay? I've gotten more evidence in DW misdemeanor cases than I have in this capital murder case. And I did misdemeanors a long, long time ago. Blood analysis, recorded statements from the driver even.
Okay, but here's my thing, Nonstop Mom. Even if you're right, to be fair, we did not watch all of the testimony. Okay, that is fair. However, the state never surmised their theory of the case as of the crime, and it occurred where the in that cab in front of the Mandalay Hotel, the Omni Mandalay Hotel. Okay, so what Mr. Saeed, what she's saying is that after Mr. Saeed's testimony yesterday, it's clear she didn't quite, that's what she's implying. It's clear that that's not where it occurred. Because if you remember, Mr. Saeed said that he was over there by Riverside and 121 and sort of by the lodge, the Gentleman's Club, which is not a huge driving distance between where the lodge Gentleman's Club is and the actual where the taxi cab was found, right? It's like a 7-minute drive, but it would be, even if we had listened to all of the state's evidence, it wouldn't have been clear. That's not what they asserted, and the defense put on no evidence to prove that. Do you see what I'm saying? So, I mean, you're right.
Videos of testing done in the field, something, provide something. We don't even have anything in this case. We have a 911 call and an email to a teacher. The investigation, as you heard, is based on this very important 911 call that they say that they believe was made by Sarah Saeed. As you see, the 911 call taker, Mr. Kevin Hubbard, he testified. He testified the language on the 911 call was unascertainable. And that he also said all he could hear was that the female on the call said she was dying. Any other statements were inaudible to him, and they were listening. That was a very important 911 call that all the officers had, and apparently they say they listened to. Throughout the evidence from the medical examiners, you heard that Sarah was shot 9 times. 9 times, ladies and gentlemen. We know Amina was shot 2 times. We don't know how long after being shot,
Hey,
that 911 call
Anaphylaxis,
was
good to
made.
see you, babe.
We have no information as to that. Patricia Owens stated that it was Sarah's voice, so all I can assume is that that young lady made a 911 call after being shot 9 times and bleeding out. The first reliable witness from the state that you heard from was the medical examiner, Dr. Janice Townsend Parchment. She testified very nicely and very unbiased, I felt like. She was not elusive in her answers when people were asking her questions. She provided direct answers and clarity to her report and her findings. She was honest about when she could not prove or provide a direct or clear answer to our questions. She explained trajectories are undeterminable due to mainly the human body being in motion if there's a struggle or shots being made. She also explained that when a person is dying, that they will continue to experience possibly auditory and visual hallucinations. And that's because the body is in complete shock.
I
She
did too,
was very
nonstop,
clear
Mom.
that-
I did.
That hypovolemic
She
shock
did.
is uncommon.
She raised some
But that
excellent
is
points.
not outside the realm of possibility after being shot 9 times. Okay.
Oh, Molson, Man, and Sam, you guys are the
Let's
best.
talk
Thank you
about
so
the no
much.
investigation being completed. I have the list there. I mean, no DNA taken or tested, ladies and gentlemen. No fingerprints. Not from outside the vehicle, not from the inside of the taxi, not even from the magazine found inside of the taxi that you.
Okay, so I want to just address this really quick, which it won't ever be really quick because it's me. I think, Callie, where this is coming from is there have been studies done on human beings and what occurs when they die in different ways, right? And I think the argument that the defense is trying to assert here is that there is something, it is possible due to the blood loss, right, that she would have maybe been hallucinating. But the thing is that you have, what she's not, she should remember what she's not saying, and which is really important, is that, okay, in 2008, cell phones weren't like the way they are now, right? Like in 2008, if you wanted to type B, the letter B in a text, you had to hit the number 1 button twice, and so on and so forth. Okay. So not only that, but I had to turn this off. But Facebook, if you have Facebook on your phone and you shake your phone, it'll pop up this thing, and if you click it, it'll tell you, click if you need help. Okay. I had to turn mine off because I dropped my phone too much, and it kept going off, and I was really very, very afraid that I was going to accidentally request help. So but the thing of it is that while it is possible, it's also possible that it did not happen, given the fact that Sarah was able to dial 911. She actually had to push the buttons, and she didn't have a smartphone like we have in 2008. So she had to push the buttons. And the other thing is, and they're going to play the 911 call, but you know how when you're calling 911 and you're requesting help for somebody else or even for yourself, and if you're with it, you wait until you hear 911, what is your emergency? And then you begin speaking. If she were hallucinating or out of it or whatever, don't you think she would be speaking over top of the 911 operator as soon as he answers the phone? But she's not. She waited for there to be an answer. And you are absolutely fine, Callie. It's an excellent point. It's just she could be right, but it's like a half truth. And I find half truths to be no better than a lie. It's annoying. So, all right, here we go. We're going to keep going.
You heard these officers saying that they believe was used.
I think it's ridiculous, a
offense.
preposterous assertion myself,
We have
Callie.
no
I agree with
ballistics
you.
Testing, no ballistics done to even determine whether one or more weapons were used. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I mean, this is very, very important in a double homicide. Double homicide. This is investigation 101. I mean, you can go on and Google the national standards for investigators, and they can do that themselves in the field on their police provided cell phones. Nobody did that. We have to understand, is this a father who murdered his children? Is this a robbery that happened in a taxi? Let's not play that robberies don't happen to taxi drivers. That's a common occurrence. That's why you heard Yaser say sometimes when he would work nights, he would take a gun with him for protection. And any taxi driver can talk to you about that. You heard from 2 of them. There are also no surveillance videos taken from the hotel surveillance system. First, let me go through some of these individuals that didn't provide you with any investigation. We have Mr. Stephen Hazard. He's the gentleman that went to the taxi the night of. He didn't fingerprint the taxi or the magazine found in the taxi. He said it wasn't important because there was a 911 call. You remember the 911 call that you heard the 911 caller say, all he heard was the girl saying she's dying. Failed to check other surveillance around the area where the taxi was left. He didn't think it was important to go ask about the six surveillance cameras at the Omni Hotel. I mean, if it's not Yaser, we got to figure out who it was. And we're never going to know. He did not conduct
Oh,
a
I don't-
DNA
I'm-
analysis
no.
at the scene of the crime.
I'm with
He's
you
like, "No, I
there,
didn't do
Kelly.
that. I didn't think
Not
it
a
was
fan.
important because of this 911 call." But later on, he says he never heard the 911 call himself. But this gentleman chose to base his entire investigation on a 911 call that he never heard. I'm not going to do all the testing and all the other stuff I'm trained to do. Why should I? We already know who did it. It's common sense, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Nathan Watson. You heard from this gentleman at the hotel. He couldn't testify to how full the hotel was and what kind of activity was going on the night of the girl's murder. He said that he's seen Yaser before, but he didn't see him that evening. He was not sufficiently aware of the surveillance footage that the hotel possessed. Then why they speak to him? Officers can figure out who the next important person to speak to is so they can obtain their evidence. We didn't hear from any of those people. We had Mr. Nathan Watson. Next, Randall Johnson, also from Irving PD. And I'm going to pause here. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. So let's go back. So no gunshot residue done on the family members. So Officer Hazard said he didn't think that was important because it's common sense. I put the poles in these holes and I figure out the trajectory. That's not science, ladies and gentlemen. They go to trainings. They do all kinds of funded classes, CLEs, continuing education courses to learn how to stay on top of proper investigations because things are ever changing. He didn't do that. He didn't even, actually nobody thought it was important to even get gunshot residue from any of the individuals involved anywhere in this, like from the beginning to the end of this case. Nobody thought to get gunshot residue from Patricia, from the 2 boyfriends that were heavily involved in everything that led up allegedly to this situation. Back to surveillance videos. You heard about Irving PD having a fleet of officers broken up, going all across Irving, looking at surrounding areas, businesses, apartment complexes. There's a dart station nearby. None of those individuals saw Yaser Saeed, but also none of those individuals were looking for anyone else. And none of those individuals thought it would be important to go and pull the surveillance videos from the nearby apartment complexes that they went to, from the nearby dart station that was around. If a taxi's driving around possibly with dead bodies, it's very important to pull surveillance videos from the surrounding areas to see if those vehicles are traveling on those videos, to see if you can tell who's in the car. We get those videos on drive-by cases in South Dallas from DPD all the time, but Irving police, they don't have that capability, they said. You know, the gunshot residue, Hazard said that it wasn't even important to him. He didn't even take gunshot residue from the outside or the inside to see if there was residue on the outside of the taxi or on the inside, because he said that wasn't important to him because of the 911 call. Well, that's very important to understand. Were these ladies shot outside of the taxi? Were they shot inside of the taxi? If you don't know the location of the shooting, all of these things, all of these pieces of evidence that you should try and collect are very, very important in a Dumbo homicide where bodies had been moved. Now we go into the no written or recorded statements.
I'm so confused about this. Bodies have been moved.
All right. It's very important to me that officers get written and recorded statements from witnesses involved in cases, and it should be to you too, especially when we're talking about capital murder and 2 young ladies being dead. It's a big deal. We have no written or recorded statements from anybody interviewed by Irving Police Department and their team of detectives.
And yes, Nonstop
The
Mom.
drama all stemmed from a plan that teenagers and Patricia Owens devised, okay? Nobody thought it would be important for those individuals to write down their version of these events. They talked to them about moving from Dallas, from Louisville, to going to Kansas, going to Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden coming back to
I'm going to
Dallas.
object to this slide. There's several words on here that are a complete misstatement of the facts.
Your Honor,
The second line and the fourth line.
no, I'm going to break down exactly the facts that were presented.
As it's presented in words, in black and white on this, it is a misstatement of the evidence and the testimony.
The jury will recall the testimony and the evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Closing
So-
statements are not evidence.
This is a major issue for this investigation, especially because the alibi witness for a possible suspect has changed. And so the whole story regarding Edgar Ruiz and Eric Piamino has completely changed. Edgar Ruiz's whole story has changed 2 weeks ago before we started this trial. For 14 years, the Irving Police Department's version of events is up there. And Detective Hennig and Shingle testified to this information. For Hennig, I'm sorry. For 14 years, the Irving Police version of events was that Edgar and Eric came into the police station the night of January 1st of 2008 when the bodies were found. Both boyfriends spoke to Detective Shingle, and he took their identifying information. Edgar stated that Amina left his house with Patricia. Edgar explained that he and Eric were sitting at an intersection in Louisville, and they saw the girls and Yaser in a taxi together. They decided to follow the taxi. Edgar had said that Eric called Sarah asking if they were okay, and then they hung up the phone. Edgar stated that they took the exit to 635 to head back to Louisville.
I'll be right back, but I'm in
And that
chat.
the taxi looked like it was taking the 114
So y'all
exit.
behave. Molson
Edgar
Man,
had explained to
Christine,
Detective Shingle that
Sam,
they did not
y'all
know
are in charge.
anything had happened that night to the girls, and they were just checking on them to see if they were okay. And it was very, very clear by all the officers in Irving PD that were involved in this case that they did not take any written or recorded statements from these 2 gentlemen that night, even though Edgar says he wrote out a statement and provided it to Irving Police. Now, you see Detective Shingle, he said that he never independently interviewed Edgar and Eric when they arrived to the police station, that he interviewed them together, not separately. He never got written statements from either gentleman. He never asked the boys who the friend was that informed them of the girl's death, that led them to come to the police station. And he didn't even search either one of them for gun residue. I mean, why not? Just to be sure. Now let's go into Eric Piamino's story. His version in trial this week was this, last week. He was very clear that he was not in the car with Edgar when Edgar allegedly followed the girls and Yaser in the taxi. He also explained his parents were not happy about him leaving and getting married, and that they still supported his decision. He stated that he had only gone with Edgar to the police station to check on the girls. Eric stated that he never saw the girls in the taxi that night with their father. So that's Eric's version on the stand, and I can understand why Edgar changed his version last minute, because sworn statements are very different in court than mumbo jumbo you say to police at a police station on a not recorded conversation. So now let's go to Edgar Ruiz's version of events up there. Like I said, his version of events actually changed literally 2 weeks before trial. He explains that he and his father were the ones in the vehicle following the taxi that evening. And he and his father were the ones who went to the police station together. He explained that his family was not happy about the marriage and leaving to go to Oklahoma, but that they supported and provided him a vehicle. Supportive parents. He drove the girls and Patricia Owens to Kansas and then Oklahoma. He, Edgar, signed a 1-year lease in his name and assisted getting furniture and moving furniture into this apartment for them to live in. He explained that after everything was all set up, the girls decided they wanted to go back to Louisville. And he was just kind of shocked by everything, but okay, let's go back. He explained that Amina was forcefully taken by Patricia to go back home. You remember that testimony where Patricia came and pulled Amina back and said, we got to go home. And when Amina was being pulled away, she told him, you failed me. After this whole dramatic exchange, he says he was driving with his father to go bail out a family member in Richardson jail, and that his father, who had never seen Yaser, had spotted the taxi with the girls and Yaser driving. They followed them to make sure they were safe, is what he said. And he called Sarah and she said hello a number of times and hung up on him. And he felt that that was a sign of safety. So he and his father decided to just part ways and go off to Richardson jail to go bail out the family member instead of following the love of his life to make sure that she was okay. That's his version of events now. So his alibi witness changed on the eve of trial. After speaking to the prosecutors, we got that information and found out his father now lives in Mexico. His only alibi witness we have now lives in Mexico, is unavailable to come to America for this case. Okay? I find that very interesting. And I think that it was interesting from the very, very, very beginning of this whole incident. And I think it's a failure of the system that none of the officers thought to investigate that further, just to be sure that they have all the evidence and information that they need. Now, we talked about no phone records from any other possible family members or individuals involved in the circumstances that the state is basing this whole case on. You heard from Mr. Causey. He said he never performed a phone dump on any Patricia, Edgar, Eric, or Victor. That's Victor's, the father of Edgar Ruiz. We found out his name is Victor. So no phone dumps were done for any of these individuals. And I submit to you, if Irving had done their interviews and investigations properly, that we would have at least maybe heard about Victor. Maybe that would have raised flags to maybe we should get all these other phone records to confirm what people are telling us. Next, let's discuss. You heard about these prior abuse allegations that Patricia made against Yaser. You heard from this gentleman, Coy West, and you heard that that case and those allegations were fully investigated by the Hill County District Attorney's Office where he works. You also heard that a doctor examined both girls and nothing was found, nothing to substantiate the allegations made by Patricia. And the case was dismissed. I also found it very interesting that the important part of the case that the state was trying to bring up, they were like, oh, we lost the recanted videos. We don't have that information, but we have all the other bad information. We don't have the stuff that actually shows that the case is not valid. We just have the dismissal. Now let's get into, before I leave the Patricia thing, those allegations.
Hold on just a second before you get into the Patricia
argument
thing.
about why those allegations.
Hold on just a second, you guys. Okay, I would just like to take this time to point out the fact that, ma'am, as a defense counsel, you have the right to not only you can investigate this case yourself if you want to, and in order to advocate for your client, but that's not the way you chose to. You and your team decided to handle things. And I would also like to point out that going and bailing somebody out of jail is a process in Texas. Okay. Now it depends on what the uncle was in jail for. If he were, and I suspect because of the time frame that it happened over New Year's Eve. So if he were in there for, let's say, public intoxication, as long as he went willingly and he didn't give the cops any trouble or whatever, likely what they would do is let him out. They put him in a drunk tank, let him out, and he just needs a ride and he's got a court date. Okay. However, they use the term bail, which I pointed out this morning, but then I thought, but now that I'm hearing it back again, I have a little more to say about that. Picking somebody up from jail is different than bailing somebody out from jail. Bailing requires a process. So if that's the case, if he's telling the truth, which I believe he is, all Irving Police Department would have to do is do a search, and they would see who bailed him out. That's all it would take. Which also, because it's part of the discovery, the defense would have had access to. So if there was some other reason, so if that alibi was a lie, why didn't the defense put up contradicting evidence? And we heard the boyfriend's testimony, so we know that they did not put up contradictory evidence of the alibi, as it were. And it's not even, I mean, they were not people of interest, so I suppose alibi is probably not the right word, but it's her word, so I'll use her word. That's all I wanted to put out. Okay.
Allegations are important because it just shows that Patricia Owens is a liar.
Oh,
Either she
wait, I
lied to
forgot one
police
thing.
to get the case filed.
Okay. Also, if you watch the documentary, The Price of Honor, okay, they talk about this report. They talk about the outcry. They talk about the report. They talk about it being about the charges being it being recanted. Okay. And the person that obviously Patricia is in the interview. Okay. And it's just her, right? You just see her on the screen. But as she goes through the story, right, she starts to disappear, and the report comes forward into the foreground. It's kind of behind her, and you can read on the screen where the report reads, essay cannot be ruled out. That's what the actual report says. She's not telling the whole truth. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Or she lied to police saying it's not true. And under the law, that's an unreliable witness, okay? That is not appropriate for a team of Irving police and FBI investigators to just hang their hat on that one unreliable witness. So the
And she's
injuries
right.
were abuse.
Patricia's not a good witness.
You never saw any photos of any abuse or injuries. There's no documentation of hospital records or school records that ever documented any abuse or injuries. CPS was never even called by any of the schools, not any neighbor, not anybody, only Patricia.
I believe, though, in the documentary
Also,
that
I
the
believe
Aunt
the medical examiner
Jill
reports
and
are
Aunt
evidence for
Connie
you guys
did
to
call
review, ladies and
CPS
gentlemen.
on Patricia
And,
for this
You'll
situation.
see that the medical examiner reports also do not document any prior abuse or bruising or scarring or anything like that on those bodies. Now let's talk about Ms. Hopkins, that email. Talk about this email right here. This one email out of, she said, hundreds or a lot of emails that she received, but we only have one that was turned to police. And there's no evidence. I want you to review this. And you're going to see Ms. Hopkins even said she never even contacted CPS about any of these. As a teacher, she didn't obviously think it was that important to contact CPS herself. There's no evidence that you heard of to corroborate what's written in that email by Amina. There's no evidence presented to corroborate any of that. This email was sent on December 21st of 2007. To me, that's a red flag, and it should be to you too. Nobody was getting an arranged marriage like is discussed in here. Nobody even came back from Egypt on 2 trips with their families with an arranged marriage. Okay, so that's just a falsity. It was sent after Amina did make plans with Joseph Moreno to go and get married in Vegas after she came back from Oklahoma. A plan that was devised so she and Joseph could be together forever. And that plan was actually confirmed by Detective Henning when he spoke to Joseph Moreno and Bruce Trotter, and he testified to that. He didn't want to talk about it.
Outside the record, there's no testimony, and Joseph did not testify.
Detective Henning spoke about it. in his cross.
Thank you. The jury instructed that argument of counsel is not evidence. The jury will recall the testimony and the evidence in this case.
So you
Hey,
heard from
cement shoes.
Detective Hennig that he confirmed when he got a call.
Sorry, you
from
guys, my
Joseph
chat's
Moreno
loading weird.
And also spoke to his mother, Ruth Trotter. You heard from both boyfriends that Yaser never threatened them or even had spoken to them in person, never even calling them to threaten them and their lives. They all went to the same grocery store. You heard Eric say he even saw Yaser, and Yaser didn't do anything. Well, if you have such disdain for these boyfriends, I don't see how such a dangerous and abusive man wouldn't go and even say one profane word to them. Nothing.
I thought the boyfriends were a secret and Yaser didn't know about it
That's why
until
that- because
after they got
really,
back.
Patricia Owens is the lead investigator in this whole case. That makes me just sick to my stomach when I think about it, because how much money, how much time, how many cases that have been done inappropriately by Irving police. It just breaks my heart, but let me continue. Her statements were the only ones believed by Irving Police Department. Her son Islam was interviewed the same night that she spoke to police. And he was very clear that his father would never do such a thing. And he was very clear in his concern about the relationship that the girls had with the boyfriends and kind of the drama that ensued because of Patricia stirring the pot. But Irving Police, they dismissed what Islam said, okay? They actually dismissed everything any member of the Saeed family ever said. Extended family was spoken to. They raised their interest about the concern of the boyfriend situation, but nobody thought that was important, just to investigate, to make sure. And the reason why they diminished all those is because it didn't fit into their narrative. All the statements from Islam and all the other family members that are aware of this whole family dynamic and situation were very clear that Yaser would not do something like this, but nobody gave it any credibility or credence, just to follow up and make sure they're lying. If you think they're lying, get the evidence to make sure they are lying. Patricia's family doesn't even like her, okay? Including her sister, her aunt, her own son Islam. And as you heard from the two boyfriends, they weren't really fond of her either. They thought she was kind of weird acting. If they're on the run trying to get away from a dangerous father, she wanted them to drive her around to go visit her family, go see her mother's grave. That I believe Edgar said that was weird, since she and her mother didn't even like each other. Nobody likes Patricia. Nobody. And what's weird is she's the only one standing out of all of this. 2 daughters are passed, a husband here, an ex-husband. I haven't seen the divorce papers, so I don't know what she's talking about, the divorce.
Yeah, this
But
is
her husband here, her son in federal prison, and then
This
her
is a mess,
brother-in-law,
you guys.
his brother, in federal prison as well. All because she's the lead investigator in this case. 2 sets of families.
but she's not
just
wrong. Nobody likes
exploded
Patricia.
and are no longer. What I see from Patricia Owens is a woman that has always used her children to manipulate other people. What I've seen is Patricia Owens use the system to manipulate other people. We talked about that prior abuse allegation she made that ended up being dismissed. Like I said, either she lied to the cops to get it filed, or she lied to the cops to get it dismissed. That, I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, is not appropriate. Either way you dice it. It's not appropriate for an individual to behave that way with police and to get away with it and be the lead investigator in this case. She pulled her daughters out of school for the purpose of getting her high school age daughters engaged to their boyfriends. And she also testified that the girls wanted to come back because they were the ones concerned about finishing school. And they said they wanted to come back and finish the year and make sure that Amina graduated.
But you said she's a liar, so why do you believe that's the hold
She
on
also
a
called
minute.
herself a breadwinner.
Hold on.
That really bothers me.
Okay, let it bother you. You can just sit on it for just a second. It'll be bothering you when I unpause. Here's the deal. This is something that just irritates me about human beings in general. If you just spent the last 3 minutes roughly telling this jury and everybody watching that Patricia is a liar and you can't trust anything that she says, she's not credible, right? Well, how come she's credible when she says that the girls wanted to come back to finish school? Why would they knew that they were, it was their plan to run away, right? It was their plan to flee. Certainly they realized that they would not be able to be in school. They're smart girls. This is just poppycock, and I can't stand it. Either if she's a liar, which I agree, she is a liar, right? So then don't bring her up when it's convenient for a story, saying that the girls wanted to come back to go back to school. That's just poppycock.
I really don't like, thank you, Judge. She calls herself the breadwinner after stealing $5,000 cash from Yaser, but in the same breath, she said she never worked. She said she never worked.
She said she
but
worked.
I'm the breadwinner, and
That's not true.
she couldn't even live on her own after the murders happened. You heard testimony that she ended up moving in with Mohsen, who's Yaser's brother. Mohsen and his wife.
I know,
right?
Amelia. Tomorrow's
You're
the first
breadwinner.
day
Why
of
do you
school.
need to
I have to
keep
get. I
relying on
can't. I
a
can't be
family
so
that
late
has helped
tonight.
you and supported you. She's a woman who even the Saeed family had to step in to assist her because her parents wanted
You're
to get
right,
rid of her and
Kelly.
her
Absolutely.
sister at the age of 15 years old. The Saeed
Let me
family is the one
rewind that
stepped
because
in
that's
to
an
assist
important
and
thing
has
that
always
she
been
just
there to
said.
help Patricia through her. His parents wanted to. You need to keep relying on a family that has helped you and supported you. She's a woman who even the Saeed family had to step in to assist her because her parents wanted to get rid of her and her sister at the age of 15 years old. The Saeed family is the one that stepped in to assist and have always been there to help Patricia through her misgivings and miscomings. They've always taken her back. Even after all this, they helped give her a place to live and a car to drive. This lady was the lead detective, and she provided all the evidence to Detective Henning and all those people. What I find is unbelievable is that this case is also based on ignorance. It's based on prejudice and ignorance. It's ignorant to think that a father who just wanted his daughters to be educated and provide for themselves is an abuser because he wouldn't let his daughters go to the mall and hang out with boys, or go get ice cream with boys, or go spend the night over at a friend's house. He's called an abuser for being concerned about their
I took it as
safety
she was
when
saying
his kids were not, his
that
daughters were
Patricia
not home late at
testified
night.
they wanted to go back
Called
to
an abuser
school.
for disciplining his daughters and his son
Mainly,
equally
hold on
by
just a
taking away
second.
their phones and vehicle when they were not focusing on school.
The way that I took it was that she was saying, what she was saying was that Amina and Sarah, hold on, let me think about how to put this together correctly. There you go.
He did that equal to Islam and the girls. These girls in Islam never went without. They had nice clothes, they had vehicles, they had support. And this is not abuse, ladies and gentlemen.
I used, when my kiddos were young, I had to do that too.
And how they discipline their kids. Just like they have a preference in what kind of food they eat, what kind of people they date, what religion they want to practice. This is all people's preferences. It doesn't make somebody a murderer. Discipline does not mean you murdered your children. Your culture does not mean you murdered your children. Your skin color or nationality, or if you come from Europe or wherever you come from, does not mean that you killed your children. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you guys know that you heard from these people, Mr. Tafal, who said that it's common for subtaxis or subleasing of taxis. That's a common practice. You heard that Mr. El Hassan said GPS systems turn off by themselves when they're full. You also heard both these gentlemen say they never had a problem with Yaser Saeed.
Right.
Nobody had a problem.
Perfect. Here's the deal. And you're right, Callie. It doesn't mean that they were or were not abused. The problem here is this for the defense. The victims said that they were abused, and the victims can't testify because, unfortunately, they've been unalived. So I don't know what her point was there. Okay, so Nonstop Mom, now I understand what you're saying. Okay, there's two separate incidences. Okay, so what she's talking about with the forcible making Amina come, that was on January 1st. That was after they'd already gotten back from Oklahoma. And what she was trying to say in her closing statement is that essentially Patricia is such an irresponsible mother that she pulled her teenage daughters out of school to get married. And then the girls realized that that the girls were more responsible than their mother, and that's why they wanted to come home so that they could finish school. But that part of the testimony comes from Patricia, because I do remember specifically Eric and Edgar being asked why they decided to come home. Now, Edgar wasn't there when that decision was made. He was already back in Texas to celebrate New Year's Eve, and then he intended to go back to Louisville after New Year's Eve. His family threw a party. But Eric was most certainly asked, and Eric did not know why they came back, other than Patricia telling the girls that it was safe. So if she is my point was, if she's a liar, she's a liar. You can't rely on testimony from her when it's convenient to prove your point that she's irresponsible. That's my point. That's what I was trying to say.
Except for Patricia Owens.
Objection, Your Honor, the photo was not in evidence. Objection also to her continuing after her time.
Sustained.
Ladies and gentlemen, the only decision that you can make in this case is basically a not guilty, because it's you that holds up this Constitution and you that tells Dallas County, the FBI, and the Irving Police to do proper investigations before they waste millions of dollars of taxpayers' time, dollars.
Objection, Your Honor, again.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Counsel?
Okay.
I would say you have about 25 minutes. You're counting, right? You may.
I agree, Callie. I agree.
To the jury, Bogdan has done a wonderful job going through all the areas of doubt. in this case.
That's pretty much what happened, Cement
I would
Shoes.
gladly concede the rest of my time or any of my time for
But-
her to finish what she
Hold
was walking through here, because I think it's important, and I think she's done a wonderful job.
Do you? Okay, cool. She did. Yes, that's accurate. That's accurate. That's correct. Patricia, I have to say, I'm not going to go as far as to say that I agree with the defense's argument that Patricia Owens was the lead investigator in this case. I think that's redonkulous. But what I will say is that it was definitely Patricia orchestrating things. She was the middleman between all of this. She was the one who got into the safe to take the cash that they would need. She is the one who decided where they would go, first to Kansas, then to Oklahoma. She's the one that told Sarah and Amina that it was safe, that she had, I don't know if she spoke to him directly, but that he had promised everything was going to be fine, yada, yada, yada. She was the puppet master. Dun, dun, dun. All right, here you go.
Illustrating the problems in the state's case. You know, in their first closing arguments, they're going to get up and they're going to get the last word. So the prosecutor's going to have the final word on all this to kind of clean up their case. But when they first got up, they said this is simple, that it's not difficult. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think this is one of the most difficult cases that you can do, that can be presented to a jury. It's been very, very difficult. It's been frustrating to look at what Irving Police Department did, what Louisville Police Department did, what the federal government did. And, you know, they said that it is insulting to the memory of Amina and Sarah. But I would submit to you that the case that they had presented to you, that the quality of work of the Irving Police Department and the quality of work in the Louisville Police Department, the quality of work, the allocation of resources designated by the federal government, that the case that this district attorney's office has presented to you is insulting to the memories of Amina and Sarah. We all want justice. We all do. We all want justice for Amina, and we all want justice for Sarah. We want to respect the lives that they lived and the lives that they lost. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, justice is not convicting an innocent man, their father, of a crime that he did not commit. Justice is holding the state accountable for their actions from day one until today. Justice would have been Irving Police Department doing their job. Bahrain's right. Misdemeanor cases produce more evidence related to the facts of a case than what Irving Police Department has produced here. Justice is holding them to their burden and making them prove beyond a reasonable doubt their case. And I want to get to the burden here in a moment and what beyond a reasonable doubt means, but the instructions from this court that you'll have back there with you in this jury charge state specifically, the state must exclude all reasonable doubt about a person's guilt. If the state fails to meet this burden, you must acquit the defendant. So what is reasonable doubt? You know, my colleagues in the defense bar, opposing counsel, we sometimes get lost in it. We get lost in trying to define it, to conceptualize it. We may use bar graphs or pie charts or percentages. But by law, there is no definition of reasonable doubt. And there's a reason for that. Because you 12 jurors and the 3 alternates, you are reasonable people. So by definition, by default, any doubt that you have is per se reasonable. And don't let the state try and explain that away or minimize your concerns in this case or minimize your questions. You are the most powerful people in this courtroom. You decide what justice is. You decide what doubt is. And it's different for everyone, which is also why there's no definition. For some of us, people like me, it's emotional, it's visceral. For others, it may be spiritual, it may be philosophical, it may be intellectual. But they give you that power for you to decide what your doubt is. It can be a lot, it can be that little tiny tug in your heart, that pinch that tells you something just ain't right here. Something is wrong with what is going on here today. We don't have what we need.
What?
They have failed to meet their burden. Because beyond a reasonable doubt, I mean, yes, it's the highest burden in our land. But they're asking you to take a third life here today. They're asking you to take Yaser based on this case and this investigation and all the insanity that they put forward today, the behavior of these testifying witnesses, law enforcement. They want you to use that to convict a man of capital murder and put him in prison for life without parole. I think the other important thing
Calm
about
down. He's
beyond
like
reasonable
60
doubt and
years
burden
old or
is
65
that
years
it's
old. He'll
on.
be in the geriatric wing. Stop it.
Doubt in this setting, in this courtroom,
He was on
it is
the
not a
lam for
passive concept.
12
We do not wait
years.
for doubt to find us. To expect the defendant, just like prosecutors said in their closing arguments, to expect us to present you with doubt is not only inappropriate, it is unlawful. It is their burden to
If
answer
he's
the
found
question. It is
guilty, I
their burden to
should add
establish the
that,
credibility.
yeah,
It
he
is
would
their
be
burden to clear up the
in the
inconsistencies.
geriatric wing.
And because of that, doubt and the pursuit of reasonable doubt is an active participation. We seek it out. We look for it. We don't give these officers credibility because they take the stand. They start with zero credibility, and it is their job to build the credibility of that testimony. It is their job to build the credibility of these absurd extraneous offenses. And I want to touch on the extraneous offenses for a second. Y'all saw me fight with everything I had to keep this stuff out. And I kept referencing that there's a time and a place and a procedure and a way to do this. And I want to be clear, I am not conceding one of those allegations. I don't believe a word of one of those allegations. Yaser did not do any of those extraneous offenses. My frustration and my anger is that they were trying to cheat the system to get it in. That they wanted to lob it out
The
there.
counsel testifying, Your Honor.
The jury will recall the testimony and the evidence. Argument of counsel is not evidence.
For the 11 billionth time.
By their own arguments. They said, we don't want to get into the details of it. We just want to mention it. We just want to drop it out there to try to inflame you, to prejudice you, to get you to believe in something that their colleagues in other district attorneys' offices rejected outright. Now, again, Bob Ron's done a masterful job going back through all of this case. I'm not going to go back through all of it, but there's a couple things I wanted to add it to. On the 911 call that they've made such a big deal about. It's interesting that they use hearsay statements from Patricia through a different testifying officer to identify the caller as Sarah. Right? That's how they were able to get that in. They didn't ask Patricia outright while she testified about the call.
You didn't either.
Not who made the call. That was something they tried to clean up later on. But they did ask her what it said. And she testified. Not that it says my dad. She used an entirely different word. Bubba. Which in her mind meant some Arabic translation or slang forefather. But
She
the
said
critical piece of
Baba
information
is what
here
she said on
heard
the
an
stand,
entirely
but
different
whatever.
word than every law enforcement officer who got up there and testified. So you have Patricia, the mother of the child who has been murdered, who refuses to adhere to their narrative. The closed captioning that they put up on their 911 call that one of their interns probably typed on there.
Oh,
And the
dear.
911 dispatcher.
I think
That
when
poor guy. I mean, I know
Patricia
he did not do a good job
testified,
that night. And I know he had a hard time with
I
testimony.
I
But that is
think
the
what
single
she
most
did
important
was,
911
I
call
think
that man
she
has ever
said
met in
was,
DC.
because there's a
You think
videotape of
about
her
what
referring
he has
to
been through over the past
Yaser
14
as
years, all the
Baba.
media, every time they played, all
And
the
I
documentaries,
think that
whatever.
when she
If he's on
testified,
every one of those,
she,
how many
out of
times do you think he
habit,
has laid in bed at
used
night
the word
thinking,
Baba and
recalling
not
back
Dad.
that phone call? And then after going through it 3 times, you heard
That's
it,
the only
made an
credit I'm going to
opportunity
give
play it 3 times
Patricia.
with their closed captioning up there telling you what they wanted to say. And after that, that 911 dispatcher who was live in that moment, taking the call, not listening to a recording, trying to figure out how
Wow,
to
the
save this girl's
DA's
life,
office is now
refused
manufacturing evidence,
to
y'all.
testify to the narrative that they were trying to push. I heard she say she was dying, but he refused to testify that she heard the words, my dad. He refused to testify to that. So the mother of the young lady who's murdered and the man who was there in the moment both refused to testify to what that 911 call said, what they want you to believe. But guess who did? Every one of those law enforcement officers. We've touched on the quality investigation. I'm not going to rehash that. But think about this. Think about the careers that were made on this case. Almost every single federal agent was promoted to a supervisor position. Hazard's living the life down in Mexico right now. Detective Shingle is currently employed as an investigator for this district attorney's office. That man who provided those answers and that level of investigation is now employed by this office full-time as one of their primary investigators. So yeah, they need you to hear what they want it to be. Because careers were built on that call, careers were lost on that call, that 911 caller, the dispatcher. If you reject their narrative, then this case that has been arguably
Exactly,
the biggest case that any of
nonstop,
these other
Mom.
officers have ever participated in
Exactly.
is a lie. Built on the same lie, same level of lie as Edgar's lie. I don't know what happened to the girls in the cab that night, but it is absurd. And my visceral anger and frustration when me and Detective Shingle got into it, I mean, I'm getting angry right now thinking about it because I got 2 boys. They'll be 17 and 18 someday. And God forbid anything ever happened to them. If this is how they handle something that happens to my boys, if this is how they value human life.
Object to this line of closing argument, Your Honor. He's going into his personal opinions as well as counsel testimony. That's not an evidence.
The jury will recall the evidence in the testimony in this case. Argument of counsel is not evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. They're right. Opposing counsel was correct. This is insulting to the memory of Amina and Sarah. They are disrespecting that memory. Irving PD disrespected their memory. Louisville PD disrespected their memory. And the federal government spent over a decade not going back and doing the work that would allow us to find justice for Amina and Sarah. And that's not your fault. It is not your fault that Irving Police Department failed. It is not your fault that the federal government failed. It is not your fault that this district attorney's office has failed. But you do have the power to hold them accountable. One thing, to recap, not recap, but to add to what Bahram said earlier about Edgar. To me, there's 2 things in addition to what she said that really stand out. Edgar and Eric live in Louisville, not Irving.
What's the point?
2.5 hours after these girls call 911. When they get a call from an unidentified friend who they still refuse to identify. They don't go to Louisville Police Department. They don't go to their local neighborhood cops. They go to the police department that would be investigating the murders. How do they know to go to Irving? Who is this friend? And I think the most heartbreaking part about this, and Bahram touched on this as well, as Patricia and Islam are finding out the truth of what happened that night, or finding about what happened to their family members, to Amina and Sarah. As Islam is identifying Eric and Edgar as potential suspects, Detective Shingle is walking them out of the police department. They're in the same building at the same time being identified as suspects. But Shingo thinks they're credible, so he just walks them right out the door. And then none of them follow up. You heard Edgar testify. He spoke to law enforcement once, and he spoke to the media 3 times. Law enforcement never followed up, not at the federal level, not at the state level, not at the local level, and it is an epic failure in this case. So what do we know? You know, there are massive holes in the state story here. They want to lie about stuff about trajectory, but then not explain it. They want to lie about timelines, but then not explain it. They
Exactly,
are improperly and
Callie,
unfairly
exactly.
asking you to take all of these disconnected concepts and for you to fill in the gaps for them. But what do we know? Yaser wasn't crazy when he thought people were following. Edgar testified he was following him.
Oh my God.
That is real. Edgar testified that they got close enough to be able to see the emotions of the people in that cab. So yeah, Yaser was feeling the pressure of somebody following him, and not just at a distance, but on them.
So then why did he abandon his
One of the other questions
daughters?
I have is, through Detective Shingle, the statements that were made that night, Edgar says that he has exits to 635, and that he sees Yaser take the 114. That is impossible. It is impossible. The only way he could have known that is if he continued to follow Yaser that night. And it's convenient that 114 is also what leads to the bodies, what leads to Sarah and Amina. So he knew where they went and where they ended up. But he lied to law enforcement, and law enforcement let this run for 14 years. A lie that literally changed on the eve of trial. And they just, no big deal. Let's just roll with it. Let's just throw this type of investigation, this kind of evidence at this jury, and hope that we can inflame their hearts to get them, throw all these false accusations out, see if we can get them to hate Yaser for things he didn't do. You know, they danced around the cultural part of this. They did a great job not coming off the way that this case can come off for most of the trial. But then the quiet part got played out loud. You heard Henning laughing at the names of the individuals that were involved, mocking the names and the people, giggling about it with the DAs, kind of joking about how the names are hard to say. Everybody remembers Jihad, but what about these other ones? I don't know. And then that compounded and ended with this district attorney's office cross-examination of Yaser. And that moment, to me, encapsulates so much of the cultural element in this.
Really? That's what it was?
That when Yaser subjects himself to your mercy, for him to finally tell his story, he is instructed by this judge to use his native tongue. And then he is mocked and ridiculed, and his credibility is attacked because he's doing exactly what the judge asked him to do. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we know, based on that testimony, that Yaser was being followed that night. That's been confirmed. That he went to a cab stand, but his people weren't there. Maybe not the best cab stand, but it's the one, based on the testimony we heard, that the most people he worked with would have been. We also heard that the cabs were running thin that night, that the hotel manager said that his cab line was unusually thin because on that night in Dallas, the cabs were in such high demand that when they would normally be centrally located, they were spread out all over the Metroplex. So again, their witness supports his testimony. And if they're not where they're supposed to be, there are, what other cab stands can he go to? And in that moment, being followed intensely by Edgar, he makes a decision. So I'm going to go to some place, the dark parking lot near the Urban Convention Center, where there should be surveillance. Amina knows how to drive. Sarah's there with her. I'm going to get out and go on foot. If there's a threat, the threat will follow me. If there's not a threat, you girls have the car to go home.
That makes zero sense.
Not a great plan, but it's honest. And he was doing the best he could in that situation. Under
Was
that
he?
stress. So he gets out and takes off on foot and believes that his daughters are safe. Continues on throughout the night on foot until he begins to hear the news and hear what happened.
How is he hearing news
And he decides not to
with
turn
no
himself in.
phone?
You heard Yaser testify that if he could go back and change the decision that he made that night, if he could go back and stay with those girls, without doubt he would. He knows that it was the bad call in that moment. He understands that, but that doesn't make him a murderer.
No, the shooting of his girls makes him a
testified.
murderer.
He looked at Joel in the eye and told Joel, I did not kill my daughters. I did not kill my daughters. I did not kill my daughters.
Well, I
I
could
love
look
them.
you in the eye right now and tell you I'm
I
married
love
to
them. I
Jared
love them. I
Leto,
did
but
not
that's
kill
a
them.
bald-faced lie.
He didn't have to get up there and do that. Their case was full of holes. At no point have they ever come close to meeting their burden in this case. But after being silenced for 14 years, he wanted to tell the story for the first time. He was afraid that he wouldn't get a fair trial. I think that despite all this, you all are the equalizers. I don't
But
think
when
it's
he
even fair
needed
for
help
you to go
from the
on state
police, he
side.
called them
You
to
have the
come and
power.
help find his
have
girls.
the
He could have been,
authority.
I mean, I don't know.
Yaser loved his daughters. He may not have been the best dad in the world, but he loved his daughters. He may have made mistakes as a father, but he loved his daughters. And Yaser did not kill his daughters that night. And because he did not kill his daughters, we would ask that you find him not guilty after you're done with your deliberations. Thank you very much.
All right. I wanted to play the rebuttal, but I have to get off of here
Let's see. You have 30
because
minutes.
I've got to be up super early tomorrow for school. So I'm just going to get to it, to the verdict.
I don't know, maybe they've gone home.
He was silenced because he chose to be silent. He chose not to speak.
All right, we're on the record. Let the record reflect that the defendant is present with his attorneys, the state is present, and the jurors are present and seated. And I'd like to ask the foreperson, has the jury arrived at a unanimous verdict?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. If the defendant will stand with his attorneys. In the state of Texas versus Yaser Abdel Said, we, the jury, unanimously find the defendant Yaser Said guilty of the offense of capital murder as charged in the indictment. Please raise your hand if that is your verdict. Thank you. The court will find that the verdict is unanimous. Does either side wish to further poll the jury at this time?
No, Your Honor.
State?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes your service as jurors in this case. On behalf of Dallas County, thank you so much for your participation. This was a very important duty that you carried out today. And so since you
I
found
knew what you
Mr.
meant nonstop,
Said
Mom.
guilty, it now falls on the court, on me, to sentence him. So as of right now, you are discharged. You are a regular member of the public. You can participate in the sentencing if you wish. You're free to discuss the case with each other and with anybody else. So at this point, we're going to release you. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. Now let's skip ahead.
Your worst.
All right. Now brace yourselves. Keep bracing. Come on.
Mr. Said, since this was not a plea bargain case, you do have the right to appeal the judgment in this case, as well as the sentence, okay? And I am handing you a copy of the trial court certification of your right of appeal, which your attorney explained to you and which you signed. Did you understand that document, sir, when you signed it with your attorney?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions of me at this time?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Y'all can be seated. Off the record, let's proceed with the victim impact.
please be mindful of yourself in the court in front of a judge.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My name is Patricia Owens. I'm the mother of Amina Saeed and the mother of Amina Saeed. Because of the actions that Yaser Saeed took, I will not get to take Amina and Sarah to get their first prom dress or go to prom. I will not be able to see Amina and Sarah graduate from high school and college. Both girls wanted to be doctors. They were very smart, intelligent, bright, loving, caring, and did not have an enemy in the world except their father, the devil, that killed them. Both girls wanted to be doctors. They loved to help others. I will not get to see Amina and Sarah get married. I will not have grandkids, and I do what other grandmothers get to do, like taking them to the park to feed the ducks and play on the playground, as Amina and Sarah and Islam did when they were younger on a daily basis. Amina and Sarah was caring, loving, bright. I remember when we was on our way to Turner Falls, which we went at least 2 or 3 times a week. A year. Amina's words was to her dad, her Baba, Yaser Saeed, "You're a devil. You murdered your girls." The day we were on the way to Turner Falls in Oklahoma, Amina told you, "Baba, I have butterflies in my heart because I'm happy we're going to Turner Falls." Now, Amina and Sarah is at peace. They don't have to worry about you hurting them any longer. You have their blood on your hands. You deserve a lot more than what the judge has gave to you. You deserve to die now, not wait in prison. Not only did you abuse our daughters, you brainwashed our son. Our son is now serving 10 years in the penitentiary because of you. And that mean look that you are glaring at me with, I'm not scared of you anymore. You made me a strong person, but you took my life. You took my family all in one day. You can keep those evil eyes on me as long as you want, but you will never break me down again. Nor will you ever be able to hurt another person. And I'm going to say this. I hope somebody gets their hands on you and hurt you and do everything you ever done to anybody. That's counting the 9 bullets you put in Sarah. 9. And she called 911. Amina, 2 bullets in the heart. Anybody that loves their children would have not put a blood on their hands for the murder of these 2 beautiful girls. Not only did you hurt them, not only did you hurt these 2 girls that you claim that you love, you don't know what love is. I don't even think you know what hate is. You don't know what anything is, but to have victims. And God so help me, I will keep Amina and Sarah's picture out there. These girls may not be here alive, but they're always in my heart, always on my mind. After you doing what you did, you have caused not only anger, hatred. I can never forgive somebody like you. I always was scared of you, and you know that. You never treated me like a real person, a wife. I was more of the person that you could take your anger out. Remember when you put the knife to my throat? I do. Remember when you pointed the gun at me? I do. Remember when you shot the tires out of the car and toward the little travel trailer we lived in Covington? I do. But you know what? I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to worry about that. But there is one thing that I want to tell you. After you took my life away from me, and you know how much I love my children. My family was everything. My kids was my world, was my life. I would do anything for them, and you knew that. Even when I had to protect and put Mina in the van when you was chasing her down the road. Do you remember that? Well, I do. Well, I'm going to go on from talking about some of the abuse. But due to you now, I have a major depression disorder. I'm anemia. I have PTSD. Cannot sleep without having medicine, so I don't see your face. Well, that's the best thing. And you know what? You can keep those evil eyes glaring. Just glare away, because this is going to be the last time that you see me. But it won't be. But it won't be.
Keep your client quiet so the victim can, well, the victim's family can say their piece, okay? Thank you.
But I will tell you, I pray on a daily basis that you suffer the pain that Amina went through, that you suffer that Sarah went through. And I just hope that every time you turn around, you have bad dreams. I hope your life is so miserable that you wished you would have just killed yourself. But no, you're too coward to hurt your yourself. But you wasn't too coward to put 9 bullets in our baby daughter, Sarah, and 2 bullets in our oldest daughter, Amina. At this time, you are nothing. You are a prisoner. You are a murderer and the devil. And I am finished.
Does the state have any other victim impact?
There's one more, Your Honor.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Connie Maggio. I'm the aunt of Amina and Sarah. First of all, I would like to thank the jury, the judge, the Dallas FBI, the Irving Police Department, the DA, and most of all, the brave Bedford maintenance man that led the FBI to Yaser Saeed.
Excuse me.
I am devastated, pissed off, and heartbroken over the loss of my nieces.
That's how I feel.
For years,
Amelia.
I waited for the day Amina and Sarah would be able to escape a prison they called home. The day they were legal age to escape a place full of abuse, family secrets, and assault. But that day never came. Yes, sir. You abused, stalked, assaulted Amina and Sarah for years. Then you took their lives. For what? To protect the honor of your family name? There is no honor in killing 2 unarmed people. I call that being a coward. The only thing you done for your family's name is stain it with Amina and Sarah's blood.
Flashed. Good to see ya.
Now, yes, sir, it's your turn to get what you gave, a prison to call home. Yes, sir. I hope you live a long time in your new home. I hope the remainder of your life is filled with your worst nightmares. I hope this is your new reality. Now Amina and Sarah can rest in peace. They are no longer your victims.
Thank you.
Your Honor, for the record.
Is there anybody else? Is there anybody else?
No, Your Honor, there's nobody.
Okay, thank you.
And for the record, may I please the court, the defendant would give notice of his appeal to the Court of Appeals of the Fifth District of Texas.
Thank you. That's noted. I'd like to thank both sides for maintaining the quorum in the courtroom and for giving it your all. And we're recessed.
Well, there you guys go. That was a lot. A lot. You know, I haven't softened towards Patricia because I feel like there was some really contradictory behavior. She was so scared of her husband that she lied to him. Right? She had to do everything he said, but when she found out that her daughters were dating, and let me be clear, she should have had equal say in whether or not her daughters dated and who they dated, etc. Right? She should have been an equal partner in that. Okay? But that's not how their family dynamics were. And I'm not going to judge that because there's no point. It just is. But she also knew how Yaser was. And she knew when she saw him at that Denny's and he was chewing on the inside of his lip or his cheek that he was angry. And she's been on the receiving end of his anger. She's witnessed her daughters being on the receiving end of his anger. And she had an opportunity to get out. And the truth of the matter is, I firmly believe that the only reason that Amina went back to that house on January 1st with her mother was for her sister. She didn't want to leave her sister in a home by herself with a mother who could not protect her. Couldn't, wouldn't, whatever the deal is. At the end of the day, she didn't. You're welcome, Bowling with Cotton Balls. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here so much. Thank you all. So, no, I can recognize that Patricia suffers from battered wife syndrome or something there, something like it. I'm not qualified to diagnose. That's just my opinion. I think that being with a man 15 years older than you are when you're 15, he had a hand in raising her, molding her, as it were. But the person, in some ways, I think Patricia's punishment is actually worse than Yaser's because she's lost all 3 of her children. Islam's never going to have anything to do with her, even when he does get out. And she has to live with that. She has to live with the fact that she drove herself over to Edgar's home to get Amina. She has to live with herself knowing that she told her children that it was safe to go home. And thank you, Aunt Mom. And all of us that are parents in here know what a responsibility that is to tell your children when things are safe. They rely on us as parents. They trust us. So if we tell them something is safe, they believe it. No questions asked. And Amina believed that it was safe for her to go back. And it wasn't. And Patricia knew it because she saw him chew his cheek at Denny's. That is something that she testified to. And that is one of those things that it wouldn't have been advantageous for her to admit that, quite frankly, because that means she knew exactly. I mean, people would say the same thing I'm saying right now. She knew he was angry, and she knows what it's like when he gets angry. And yet she went to go get her other daughter. And I think she wonders all the time, and she should, if she had never gone to get Amina, would they both be alive? And we'll never know. Sad. Sad. The whole case is sad. But I got to get off of here. I've got to get to bed. I want to thank you guys all for being here tonight, and I'm glad that we watched this trial together. I love your comments in chat. You guys are always so nice to one another, and you're so supportive of me, and I can't thank you enough for that. It means the world to me, and I just want to thank you for being here. This was a tough case, a very tough case. And whatever one we end up watching will also be tough. They're all tough cases. But watching tough cases with cool people like you makes it not so bad. And I appreciate you guys. I really do. So, with that said, I probably am not going to be live in the morning, obviously. But I will definitely be live tomorrow night. And I would like to start with the Pike County family massacre tomorrow night. Hopefully. All right. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe out there in the world and on these YouTube streets. Until I see you again tomorrow night, good night and bye.